This is Jamie Dyer welcoming you to another edition of the Quo-Cast, and I'm joined by State of Quo's Ian Hill, who's here to talk about many things, his love of Quo, his time in State of Quo, which continues to be, and also 10 years since that album that he made paying tribute to Status Quo called Keep On Rockin On. Welcome to the podcast, Ian. You played at McVention recently. How was that after so long of not being able to gig due to COVID?
Well, first of all, hello, and thanks for having me. McVention was a blast, an absolute blast. It was a new venue for us and for the event. Cracking venue. The crowd were incredible. I think everybody was just so up for it because it's been so long since people could get out and go to live gigs. It was only our, I think, fourth or fifth gig since the restrictions eased. So, yeah, playing with State of Quo in front of that crowd in Glasgow was just a blast.
And you're possibly the first and only person to basically play at the same event twice, right?
Well, myself and Dave Owen, State of Quo's drummer, we played on the Friday night with our old originals band, Red Sky. And yes, we did get the name from the Quo single Red Sky, although we denied it for years. Yeah, we were invited up when the event was supposed to have taken place last year. Jay had already booked State of Quo for the Saturday. After many years of saying we would do it, Red Sky finally got together and played a reunion gig. I think it was 29 years or something since we'd last played together. And we played a one-off gig in Manchester, which was great fun. And Jay invited us to come and play on the Friday at McVention. So we said, yeah, why not? So that was fun. It confused a lot of people at the event, I think, because I think, especially with us being called Red Sky, I think perhaps they were expecting another Quo tribute. And I won't say it backfired on us, but there was a few confused faces in the crowd because obviously they didn't know a great deal of the material that we were playing because it was all original stuff, but they gave us a great reception nonetheless. And also there was the curiosity factor of myself and Dave being in the band. And most of the people that were there had only ever seen us playing Quo stuff with State of Quo. So it was good fun.
And from what I understand, you played a couple of tracks from your album as part of that group.
As it turned out, we didn't. We were going to, because a couple of the tracks on the Keep On Rockin On CD were originally Red Sky songs that we used to play live 30 years ago. But I can't remember the reason why. We had to cut a couple of songs out. I think it was due to time constraints. Things were running a bit behind. So we ended up dropping a couple of songs at the last minute. So in actual fact, we didn't play any tracks off Keep On Rockin On, which was a shame, but there were still Red Sky songs.
Yeah. Well, I feel we should go back to the beginning here before we get on to Keep On Rockin' On. The question I always ask, really, usually I start it, but in this case, we're a little way through. How did you get into Status Quo in the first place?
I've got two older brothers and an older sister. So when I was a kid, I was constantly listening to their records, grew up listening to the Beatles and etc. And then my eldest brother went out one day and bought a record called Pictures of Matchstick Men. And I remember this band on Top of the Pops with frilly shirts and weird sounds, and absolutely loved the song and used to play it on our old mono record player over and over and over. It was just something about the sound of it and the title that captured my imagination. I would have been, when was that, 68, was it? 68, yeah. 69. So I would have been 7 or 8, 9, something like that. And then a few years later, I was at my sister's flat and I used to love rummaging through her record collection, her and her husband's records, albums, discovered so much amazing music through them. And as I was sifting through, I came across this album called Pile Driver that had Status Quo in big letters across the top. And my first thought was, oh, that's the band that did that Matchstick Men song. I'll have a listen to this. And I put it on, expecting to hear similar thing. But having looked at the picture on the front, it just captivated me. And the pictures on the inside cover were just, I don't know, what would I have been, 10, 11, 12 at tops. And they absolutely blew me away. So I put the album on expecting to hear something like Pictures of Matchstick Men, and Don't Waste My Time started, and that was it.
Wow.
From that moment, hooked.
And so how long was it between that first exposure to the boogie band Quo to your first gig?
Of seeing Quo live.
Of seeing Quo live, yeah.
Well, that playing Piledriver for the first time would have been 73, wouldn't it? Because it came out towards the end of 72, if I'm right. So it was probably early 73. And I first saw them live in 75, May the 26th, 1975, at the King's Hall in Bellevue, Manchester, for my 14th birthday.
And do you remember anything of that gig?
Yeah. Not in as great detail as I would like, but there are certain memories that I've never forgotten. I mean, if you asked me to recite the set list, I'd struggle. But I can remember certain songs that I know they did play that I've not seen them do since, such as I Saw the Light. They played Claudie from Hello. But one of the biggest memories was when they actually walked on stage. I'm pretty sure it was Jackie Linton who introduced them in the same style as he did on the live album. And they just literally just walked. There was no drone, no smoke, no special effects. They literally just walked on the stage. Rick Parfitt and Francis Rossi had their arms across each other's shoulders. John Coughlin and Alan Lancaster had their arms across each shoulders. They walked onto the stage. Rick Parfitt took a cigarette out of his mouth, stubbed it out on the stage, and launched into Junior's Wailing. And it was the most exciting thing I'd ever experienced up to that point. It was fantastic.
Unfortunately, there aren't too many recordings from that period, which I always think is a shame, but they weren't to know then.
No, well, funnily enough, there's a few things that come up on YouTube or on Facebook now and again from Madrid in May 75. And it's either a week or a week before, I can't remember the date, it's a week before or a week after I saw them at Bellevue. So whenever I look at that, I think, wow, that's what I saw back then. And it was literally the Frantic Four, because there were only four of them, no keyboards. And it's that period where there literally only was a Frantic Four. Everybody goes on about the Frantic Four to 1981, which is nonsense, because Andy Bown was a member of the band from 76, 77. So there was only that tiny gap between Roy Lyons leaving and 76, 77 when Andy Bown started appearing on stage with them. So I was lucky enough to actually see the genuine Frantic Four back then.
And even then on record, there were still hints of piano in there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I used to get embroiled in arguments about this on the old Status Quo message board, which used to kick off occasionally. Keyboards, people slagging off certain songs because it's got piano in it or it's got organ. As far as I'm aware, every single Status Quo album they've ever made has got keyboards on it. The only one I can think of that's got very few keyboards is On the Level, but even that's got, I think there's an organ on, I can't remember.
Where I Am?
Yeah, there's keyboards on there. And I think, in the earlier days, piano and organ were an integral part of their sound, even on Piledriver. Don't Waste My Time, it's got the rock piano on it. It's great. I've got no issue with keyboards at all.
Were they the ones that kind of inspired you to pick up the guitar then?
Probably the band that made me want to play guitar or be in a band. I mean, I'd already sort of, again, because I've got older brothers and sisters, one of my brothers played guitar. There was always seemed to be a guitar around the house that I used to sit and try and play, even though it only had two strings. And I remember him coming to me one day and tuning the two strings to a fifth and showing me how to play a 12-bar. So I then spent that entire evening sitting in my bedroom going da-dun, 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 da-dun. So I'd already kind of had an interest in playing guitar, but I suppose, Quo were the main catalyst for me wanting to be in a band and wanting to be a musician. Prior to that, I'd been exposed to the likes of Jimi Hendrix from my older brother, and as I mentioned before, the Beatles. So I had a fantastic childhood as far as music goes. The music I was exposed to at an early age, it was great.
So when did you join State of Quo then?
That would have been June or July 2010. I got a call from Dave asking me if I would be able to stand in for the regular guitarist. It was actually not so much a private party. It was a guy called Doug Whittington, lovely guy in Scotland. It was his 50th, and State of Quo were playing a gig at a venue up there that's now sadly closed called Rockers. And it was an important gig for them. And Dave phoned me up and asked me if I could step in because the lead guitar player was unavailable. And I said, yeah, great. When is it? Thinking that I'd have a couple of months to practice. He said, it's next week. So I literally had a week to go, oh my God, I've got to learn all these. Well, when I say learn, it's one of those things you think you know the songs, but until you come to play them, you realize, no, I don't. So that was a bit of a skin of the teeth job. And they had another gig the following weekend, which again, the other guitar player couldn't do. And Graham Peters, who was the bass player at the time, they asked me if I could do that. And I said, yeah, great. It was an outdoor thing in Eccles, just outside Manchester. And on the way there in the van, Graham actually asked me to join the band full time. So I gave it some thought and I thought, yeah, why the hell not? It's fun. And I hadn't played live with a band for quite a few years. So I just thought, I'll see how it goes. And here I am 12 years later, still doing it.
Well, you always look like you're having such a great time on stage.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, the bottom line is I won't say we're pretending to be somebody else. We don't act, we don't go out there and act as if we are Status Quo. The important thing, certainly for me personally, is the accuracy of the music. If we can't play the songs right, then there's no point in being on the stage. Sometimes we get it right. Sometimes we kind of miss the mark slightly, but that's live music for you. But yeah, the great thing about being a musician and playing in a live band is feedback from the audience. That's what makes it exciting and enjoyable. If you don't get any feedback, it's hard work. There have been occasions where, as an example, last week we played a private gig for a chap who invited us to play his 60th birthday party. Now, because it was a birthday party, the audience was all ages, all tastes. It wasn't a Quo audience. And we didn't get the same feedback that we would get from a regular gig. So it was nice to play and it was enjoyable, but it was hard work because you weren't getting that feedback. And that's, I think most musicians would say that the most gratifying thing about performing on a stage is when you get feedback from the crowd or the audience. If you've got a crowd, even better.
It must be difficult playing in front of an audience that aren't as perhaps familiar with the more hardcore side of Quo's music.
Yeah, that was a bit of a one-off last week. It's not something we would normally do, but we decided we would do it because the chap was so wanted us to do it so much. We thought, we can't let him down. Special birthday, we'll do it. But when we play a lot of festival type events where, again, you play into a large crowd who, there's maybe a small percentage of them that are actual Quo fans and would recognize most of the songs. So then we tend to tailor the set. And also at events like that, the set tends to be shorter. Sometimes it's only 45 minutes. Sometimes it's around an hour. So we tailor the set to suit people who aren't necessarily Quo fans, but would recognize songs like Whatever You Want and Down, Down and the dreaded Rockin' All Over the World, which we do play at festival events because we'd be stupid not to, because it goes down an absolute storm. And that's what we're there for. We're there to entertain people and enjoy it ourselves. And my benchmark is always whether my wife would recognize it or not. If I play her a song, I say, would you know this one? And if she says no, I know we shouldn't do that at a festival. If she says, oh yeah, I've heard this one before, we know we can do it.
Are you a fan of Rockin' All Over the World as a song, or is it, not one of your favorites?
It's. I think I'm like everybody else. It's a love-hate thing, isn't it? I think at the time it came out, for me personally, they'd gone off the rails. Blue for You was, for me, a high point, and the singles that came off it, Rain, Mystery Song, and then Wild Side of Life came out, and I thought, what on earth have you done? And even though it's a pleasant song and it gets your foot tapping, it's difficult to explain. Again, this is something that always used to come up on the Quo message board, people arguing about current Quo, old Quo, current Quo, old Quo. And having seen and heard both, it is difficult to explain to somebody who's perhaps younger and maybe didn't get into the band until Rhino and Jeff Rich joined the indie, post In the Army now. It is difficult to explain what a difference it was going from Blue for You and the likes of Mystery Song, Is There a Better Way, Rain, to Wild Side of Life, and then the Rockin' All Over the World album. The first time I heard the Rockin' All Over the World album, I just sat in disbelief. It was just, what on earth is this? And it wasn't until Hold You Back came on that I thought, this is more like it. It's not one of my favourite albums. I did get to like it a little more as the years went by. But I think Wild Side of Life and the Rockin' All Over the World album was an experiment that they never really recovered from. That's the way I look at it. The albums in between Rockin' All Over the World and I would say Under the Influence are not so good. There's highlights in every album, but I think Rockin' All Over the World as an album, the whole thing changed. They just brought the live album out, one of the best live albums ever, and suddenly they do this polished. I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to break the American market, and failed miserably. But it's not one of my favourite albums, Rockin' All Over the World. And even Rossi described it as poxy, which confuses the hell out of me, because I'm thinking, well, if you thought it was poxy, why did you do it? Obviously, pressure from the record company, from producers, I don't know.
Well, it does tend to split opinion, although the John Eden remix did kind of improve it somewhat.
Yeah, the funny thing about that is when I heard his remix of Rockers Rolling, which is probably one of the highlights of the album, even though it sounded a lot heavier and rockier and much meatier sound, I missed the keyboards. I thought, where's the bit at the beginning? So it's weird. You get used to something, and then when you hear a slightly altered version of it, even though you like it, you kind of, but can you put that back in?
Yeah. Well, as we've said previously, it's been 10 years since you released Keep On Rockin On, which, from what I remember, because I was around this time, sort of on the radio and stuff, and keeping an eye on all things Quo, although I wasn't doing the podcast then, you were initially thinking of releasing it as State As Quo. But how did the album come about to begin with? Like, what was the process?
Well, the initial thing was that after quite a few years of not in any songs, I just suddenly started coming up with a load of ideas, and one or two of them ended up on the CD. And at the time, I was thinking, that'd make a good Quo song. And I was very lucky at the time to have met Rhino. I used to work for Roland UK, who makes synthesizers, electronic instruments and stuff. And I was working for them as a product specialist, and Quo to this day used a lot of Roland equipment. And he got in touch with me because he needed some help with his home studio equipment, which was Roland equipment. And I had the pleasure of going to his house, sorting out the problems that he had, basically showing him how to use the equipment that he had. Had dinner with him, with the family. It was wonderful. It was great. And I'm honoured to say I count him as a friend to this day. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. But at the time I thought, I wonder if I send some demos of these songs to Rhino that, there's a possibility that Quo might actually use them. That'd be fantastic. That didn't come off. But what I did do at the time was set up a MySpace page, which was sort of a forerunner to Facebook and all the rest of it, but it was mainly music based. So basically you uploaded your tunes and people could listen to them. And I put a couple of these demos up, and I think it was within the space of about 12 months, I had 30,000 plays. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but for me, it was like 30,000 plays. Wow. And I kept getting messages and emails from people saying, can I download this anywhere? Or have you got a CD? And I thought, I'm onto something here. So that's what prompted me to actually do it as a serious project. I had maybe 4 or 5 songs that I'd written at the time. I then trawled back through my archives of ideas and came up with a couple of others. There was at least one Red Sky song on there, which was Show You the Way, that we used to play live back in the day. And then 3 or 4 songs that I actually wrote there and specifically for that project, for the CD. And a lot of people misunderstood it. And I got a lot of flack from certain people saying, Spin the Wheel, it's a rip-off of Spinning Wheel Blues. And I was like, yeah, it's not a rip-off. It's a, I don't like to use the word, not pastiche. It's an homage, shall we say, to it. Hence the title, the lyrics. It's about gambling and it's called Spin the Wheel. It's supposed to sound like Spinning Wheel Blues because that was the whole point of the project. It sounds a bit conceited. I don't mean it to sound conceited, but it became, for me, I wanted to record the album that I wish Quo would record at the time. And I got great satisfaction at the time when 1 or 2 people actually said that to me. It was nice to hear people say, this is the sort of album I wish Quo were making these days. So, job done. It was initially just for fun, but people liked it. So that's why I did it.
And Dave is drumming on that, isn't he?
Only a little bit here and there. He just helped me out with some of the parts. Not being a drummer as such myself, he listened and said, I wouldn't do that there. And I said, right, show me what you would do. And he did. He's like, right, okay, we'll record that. And he just replaced little bits here and there that lifted it because, he's a drummer and I'm not.
I think I would be right in saying the fan favourite on that album was How Many Times, which is this 8-minute epic at the end of the album, which to me is like a mixture of like mystery song, Breaking Away, and obviously 4,500 Times. How do you go about recording such a thing? Because it must have taken you a long time to work it all out.
I'm trying to remember how I came across the idea. As I say, once I started working on it in earnest, I knew that every song had to sound as if it was a Quo song. And people have remarked, I can pick out the ones that Rossi would sing. I can pick out the ones that Rick would have sang. And that's great because that's exactly what I was aiming to do. I wanted it to sound like it was a Quo album. How Many Times? Obviously, the title is a pun. 4,500 times. How many times? Each song had to have a reference to something else. And as you've pointed out yourself, there's flavors of mystery song in there, the intro, Backwater. It's I suppose in that respect, I was a bit of a magpie, taking elements of certain songs, not stealing them, not reproducing them, but emulating them, I think is probably the best way to describe it. I wanted, and the fact that you pointed out it's 8 minutes long. Quo had a habit in the early days of putting a long song on the end of the album. Roadhouse Blues, Slow Train, 4,500 times. I think was that at the end. But it was a conscious effort to try and include flavors, for want of a better word, of the likes of Backwater, Mystery Song, 4,500 times, and the title was, as I say, a pun on the on 4,500 times. But the actual song came. I was just playing around with open tunings as Quo use, and the open B tuning that is used on Backwater and 4,500 times, amongst others, that Rick Parfitt used to use. And I was just playing around with that and another open tuning that was kind of what would be used in Hold You Back, and it was the little jiggy thing, and it just went from there. It's funny that you should ask how do you write something like that. The answer is I don't know. How did Paul McCartney and John Lennon write the stuff that they wrote? It just came to them. Some people are brilliant at mathematics. I'm hopeless, but I can write a song now and again if I put my mind to it. You just get an idea. You just play around. You make something up on the spur of the moment, and suddenly, I think I'm lucky, especially when I used to be writing for the old band Red Sky. There's a couple of songs that we had where the keyboard player in rehearsal would just play something spontaneous, and I'd say, "Do that again," and he'd say, "What?" I said, "Do that, what you just did." "I don't know what I did." And then eventually we'd get to what, we'd remember what he did, and it'd just give me an idea straight away. And they were always remarks that, like, how do you turn that 5-second spontaneous bunch of notes into a song? I said, "I don't know, I just do." So,
did any members of the band ever hear your album? Obviously, Rhino must have done.
oh yeah, I sent a copy to Rhino. He gave me some feedback on it. I'm not sure. He did say he would play it to the others. Whether I honestly can't remember whether he did or not. I know he did. Going back further, there was a project that came up. Oh, must have been. It was the late 90s. I can't even remember who it was, but somebody proposed to put an album out of covers of Quo songs. And at the time, I thought, right, well, if that's going out, there's no way they're doing it without me and Dave doing a version of 4,500 times, because we'd always, for whatever reason, wanted to record our own version. And we recorded a version of it, which was loosely based on the 1982 NEC Prince Charles concert version and a bit of the live album version. And I know that Rhino played that on the tour bus one night, and Rick Parfitt allegedly thought it was them and turned around and said, "When did we do this? Where was this recorded?" And he actually thought it was them, which was quite funny. I honestly can't remember him coming back to me with any feedback from anybody else in the band on Keep On Rockin On, but he gave me some good feedback. He liked it. He said there should be more choruses.
I mean, obviously, Alan Crook, the Quo fan, wrote a song with Quo. I mean, what would it have been like for you if you had written that? Like, how would that have felt?
Very fulfilling. I mean, if they'd have used one of my actual songs, that would have been the stuff of dreams, If it was one of the songs that was written, to sound like them, one of the songs, for argument's sake, off Keep On Rockin On, yeah, it would have been amazing. I know that Rhino himself, probably around about that time, actually, I think it was one of the things that he said to me at the time. He wanted to try and keep the songwriting within the band. They were doing stuff by other people. Can't remember the guy's name. John
David.
John David. Yeah.
John David.
Red Sky for one. Others. Rolling Home, the later version. But I know Rhino himself was keen to keep the writing within the members of the band. So maybe that was a reason why, he didn't sort of take it any further. And I'm again, I can't say because it sounds like I'm being big-headed, but I think there's a couple of songs on the CD that I did that would have sounded great had Quo recorded them. But that wasn't to be. So I did get to do a gig with Alan Crook, though, in Norfolk a few years back. His band were playing at a private party for somebody's 40th at a cracking venue in North Norfolk coast in Blakeney. And I was absolutely flattered that he contacted me and asked me to play with him for the night. It was great. And we did do the song that he wrote the lyrics for the Quid Pro Quo album. I'm embarrassed now because I can't remember the title.
It's called Any Way You Like It.
Any Way You Like It, that's the one. Yeah, we played that on the night. So that was fun.
So you're currently, in State of Quo. Have you got any gigs coming up in the next few months, or is it literally all kind of on the wire because of COVID?
Well, if you'd have asked me that last week, I'd have said, no, we've got nothing. But since then, we've been working hard, contacting venues, and with all the uncertainty, we've kind of left it a bit late in the day. Normally, where are we? November. If we were looking at dates for next year, we'd have been doing this 6 months ago or even earlier. But because of all the uncertainty, we've kind of just left it. But yeah, we've got, in fact, literally about 20 minutes before we began this interview, I just confirmed 2 dates at a favourite venue of ours down in Swindon, the Victoria. It's a cracking little venue. So we've got a date there in May, 28th of May and the 26th of November. were in Blackpool at the Waterloo Music Bar, which is getting an amazing reputation as a venue. We haven't played it before. We're there at the end of January. We've got a festival that I can't mention yet because it's not been announced. That's in, I can't remember, August? Yes, August. And a new venue for us in June, I think it is. I've not got the list in front of me, so I can't remember. You'll have to forgive me. In Coventry, a place called the Arches, which I was lucky enough to play a few, when was it, 2019, with a Motorhead tribute that I occasionally play with called Motor Headache. And it was a great venue. And at the time I thought this would be a good one for State of Quo, but obviously with the events of the past couple of years and COVID, etc., I wasn't able to follow it up, but now I have been, and they've given us a date. So we're looking forward to that. It's always nice to play new places and to new people.
Yeah, must be nervy though, because you don't know how they're going to react.
Yeah, but I suppose that's kind of part of the excitement of it. It's the, ooh, how's this going to go? I mean, we generally, I can honestly say that I could probably count the number of gigs that I've played with State of Quo where we've not had a good reception. I could probably count on one hand and still have at least 3 fingers left. We're very lucky in that the gigs we do play, we get a good reception. We might not pull massive crowds at some of them. Some we do. It's up and down. There's a venue in Grimsby called Yardbirds, which is an excellent venue and probably even better now because it's been refurbished and the stage has been expanded. It looks fabulous. The photographs I've seen. We've done that quite a few times, and it is one of those where you think, how's it going to go? How's it going to go? You know, it's quite a drive from Manchester to Grimsby when you don't know how you're going to go down. Each time we've done it, we've got to perhaps half an hour before stage time, and there's only a handful of people in the venue, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to bomb. And then literally 10, 15 minutes before you go on, the place just fills up. And every time we've played it, we've gone down an absolute storm. So places like that you look forward to. When it's somewhere you've not played before, yeah, there is the kind of, how's it going to go sort of thing. But like I say, that's part of the fun, I suppose.
Well, yeah, mixing it up, and obviously in previous years you've played the From the Makers of fan convention, haven't you? Which must be the loudest crowd that you play to.
Certainly the most enthusiastic, simply because of the nature of the event. Yeah, I mean, we were lucky enough to play the very first one, which was fantastic, alongside Rhino's Revenge, which was great because we'd not long before that supported Rhino's Revenge on a number of gigs on his tour for promoting his second solo album. So to play again at Minehead alongside him was great. Yeah, I mean, the Minor Convention's a fantastic event. It's brilliant. And like I say, we've been lucky enough to play it twice so far. We're not there next year, but that's fine. Can't expect to have the same bands on all the time. But yeah, I suppose in terms of reaction, it's certainly one of the best things we've done. One that a strange one. We've been lucky enough to play. It sounds a bit strange, but the event is actually a motorhome show, and it's a 2 or 3 day event down near in Shepton Mallet, a huge showground, and it literally is a motorhome show. People buying, selling, exhibiting motorhomes, but there's a huge arena, and when I say huge, it's for us, it's like walking into the NEC. And we've been lucky enough to play that 3 times so far. We did it a couple of months ago. And it's bizarre because, again, you think, are we really going to go down okay in front of this crowd? There's all sorts of people making all sorts of different music. And we have had the most amazing reception at that event. And we're the only band that's played it more than once in 18 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, and they make a lot of noise. I think in terms of feedback and reaction and audience noise, McVention this year would take a lot of beating, I have to say. That and the afternoon gig we did at Manchester Academy, 2014. He says, checking the poster on his wall. Yeah, we played Manchester Academy 3 on the afternoon as the second Frantic 4 reunion tour was at the Apollo in Manchester that evening. At that point, that was probably the best gig I've ever experienced. It was fantastic. People were there from all over the place, Europe, all over the UK, and we got an absolute amazing reception. It was fabulous.
Yes, that was quite a time to be a Quo fan. So in the kind of interim when you're not gigging, did you ever get a chance to go and see Quo?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've got to be honest and say I haven't seen Quo live since 2015. That was the last time I saw them with Rick Parfitt. But yeah, when Quo announced their tour dates, the first thing we would do is block off any dates that we didn't want to play ourselves because we'd be going to see them, or we'd look for opportunities to do afternoon gigs. I mean, the afternoon gig thing, I think I'm right in saying State of Quo kind of, I don't know if they did it first, but they were certainly one of the first to do it with the earlier lineup. When they used to play at the Greyhound in Wembley, that became an annual ritual thing for State of Quo, as it was then, to play the Greyhound. And I remember going, I think I was working in London one weekend and Quo were at Wembley Arena, and I met up with Dave. He played at the Greyhound in the afternoon. It was when I was working for Roland. I can't remember what I'd been doing, but we met up and he just played a gig in the Greyhound pub in the afternoon. We went to see Quo at Wembley Arena that evening. It was great. So that kind of carried on that tradition of State of Quo playing afternoon gigs on the day of a Quo concert. We've done it in Glasgow. We've done it in Manchester. I'm trying to remember where else. We've done quite a few. So that's good fun because you know that people are coming to see you en route to going to see Quo. So it kind of kicks the day off for them. It's great, and they were always good fun to do. But as far as going to see Quo live myself, as I say, I haven't seen them live since 2015.
But you've heard some of the more recent studio material, though. Have you been keeping up with that?
I haven't, I'm afraid. No, I've not. I wouldn't know any songs off Backbone if you played them to me. I know it sounds a bit not a cliche, but when Rick died, or even before Rick died, when he was, for whatever reason, I've heard various reasons from various people why he suddenly wasn't able to appear, none of which I'll go into. But once he wasn't there, and I don't mean this in any way as a disrespect to the current lineup whatsoever, I just couldn't bring myself to go see it anymore. And I know it sounds ironic from somebody who plays in a Quo tribute band, but it would have felt, and I hate to say this because it's going to sound like I'm being disrespectful, and I don't mean it in any way disrespectful to Rhino or the rest of the current lineup. It would have been like going to see a tribute band. That might not make me many friends, but it's just how it was. The last time I saw Quo live, they played the bizarrest of venues in Manchester, the Palace Theatre, which is an old, probably Victorian music hall type theatre, and it was an odd place to see them. But I have to be totally honest and say I was bored because I knew exactly what was coming next. I knew exactly what song they were going to play next. I knew exactly what banter there was going to be. There was no, and the irony is that was one of the days when we played a gig in the afternoon, a warm-up gig, as we used to call them, a venue that's now been demolished in Manchester, which was walking distance from the Palace Theatre. We played in the afternoon, and Rhino did say that he would try and make it over and say hello, but he didn't. And when we'd finished, before we went over to the Palace to see Quo, we went to a pub over the road and we were having a couple of drinks. And Rhino phoned me, and he apologised for not being able to come over, and he said he was a bit busy, and it's like no problem. You know, we're just having a drink. We're going to come and see you guys play this evening. And he said his exact words were, "Don't expect anything new, Hilly." And I said, "I've not expected anything new for the past 15 years." And sadly, we didn't get anything new. I just used to stand there and just think, please, just play one song I'm not expecting. Just throw one song in that I'm not expecting, and I'll go home happy. Not that I went home unhappy. I just went home, when you know what's coming time after time, the same songs over and over. And I understand why they did that. It's because they need their show to flow, they're playing to different people every night. But what they're doing is they're performing, they're giving a performance, and that performance has to follow a script, if you like, for want of a better example. So I understand totally why the set list rarely, if ever, changed. But it was just so frustrating. But I've got to be honest and say that up to now, I've not really been of a mind to go and see the current lineup. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just don't think I'd enjoy it. I probably would, but if I'm totally honest, and again, I understand why it didn't happen, but I thought perhaps they might have called it a day when Rick died, and then maybe carried on as a different band. I don't know. But then again, when you've got a brand name like Status Quo, obviously you're going to continue it. It's their job. This is what people don't seem to understand. And again, things that used to come up on the old message board, arguments about this, that, and the other. Why doesn't Francis Rossi do this, that, and the other? Why doesn't this, that, and it was mainly from people who probably weren't musicians, probably don't quite understand how things work, and the fact that what they do, it's their job. It's how they earn their living. So they have to do what they have to do in order to earn their living. It's not something to do for fun or a sideline. It's their living. It's their job. So at the same time, I understand why the band has continued, and it's a completely different lineup. But I've not been able to bring myself to listen to the newer stuff, the new material on Backbone, and I never listened to Bula Quo because a certain bass player told me not to.
So a question I normally ask, and thank you for being so honest, by the way. There are a lot of fans out there that agree with you, I'm sure, and others that disagree. It's just the nature of
course,
a band that's been running as long as Quo have. But one of the questions I like to ask people is, when you look over the stuff you have listened to, is there like any particular album that you end up going to perhaps more than the rest? Do you have a preference?
It's funny because just for the sheer hell of it, I keep telling myself that one day I'm going to rate every Quo album in terms of my preference and how often I would be likely to listen to it. And in all honesty, the past couple of years, I've listened to Quo very, very little, if at all. The main reason being, when the COVID crisis hit and the lockdowns and all the rest of it, I threw myself into a completely different project, which was an instrumental album that I originally started working on when I was about 17, late 70s. And it's more of a sort of a progressive rock, influences of Genesis, Mike Oldfield, Yes, that sort of thing, a million miles away from Quo or anything that I would, the Keep On Rockin On, just the polar opposite. So I kind of, for the past 18 months, 2 years, I've been listening more to, I rediscovered my love of Genesis for a start. I hadn't listened to Genesis in years and thought, wow, I've forgotten how much I like these guys. More the earlier stuff than the later, more commercial stuff. So yeah, I haven't actually listened to a lot of Quo for a while now, but I keep telling myself that I'll, just for my own amusement, one day rate all the albums by preference. And although Pile Driver will always have a special place because of that day when I first saw and heard it, I think if I was looking at it from a musical point of view, Blue For You would have to be, for me, their high point in terms of the quality of the songs, the quality of the production, the consistency of the album. I think the main issue with Quo after Blue For You was inconsistency. If you pick any album, I don't know, Never Too Late, for argument's sake, there's a couple of tracks on there that are great, and then there's some that aren't so great. I think Blue for You is their best album in terms of consistency. Even the slightly weaker tracks, in my opinion, like Ease Your Mind, it's a bit light-hearted and it's not a rocker. It's still great because of the way it's played. John Coughlan still plays his drum part as if it's a rock song, full on, and that's what makes it. Yeah, Blue for You would probably, if I had to pick one album, it would probably be Blue for You, even though it's not got Don't Waste My Time on it, it's not got Big Fat Mama, and it's not got Paper Plane on it, it's not got Roll Over Lay Down. It's, in my opinion, their most consistent album. Even the earlier, I mean, a lot of people quote Pile Driver as their favourite. Pile Driver is a great album, but in my opinion, they were still finding the sound. If you listen to it, it's a varied album. It's a great album. It's varied. You've got boogie songs like Don't Waste My Time, Paper Plane, heavier songs like that. And then you've got a brilliant ballad, A Year, fantastic. And you've got Unspoken Words, a nice laid-back bluesy. It's varied and it's really, really good. But at that point, I think they were still trying to find their sound, their identity. And it came more with Hello, Quo. Yeah, again, slightly varied. Rossi and Lancaster dominating the songwriting, which wasn't such a bad thing. Some amazing stuff on that album. I don't like the production of it, but I like the material. I like the songs. On the Level, fantastic album. Again, quite varied. But then I think they nailed the sound absolutely on Blue for You. And as I say, after that, things have always been a bit hit and miss for me.
Yeah. So you're working on an instrumental album. Are you planning to follow up Keep On Rockin On as well?
Probably not as specific a project, because I've kind of done that. And if I did it again, I don't know, maybe it'd work, maybe it wouldn't. Because I got the opportunity with the lockdowns over the past year or so, I got the opportunity to work, proper working days on this instrumental thing that I've done called Eric's Journey. And it is a million miles away from anything Quo related. That's done, finished, and out there. My next project, which I'm literally going to start on tomorrow. Well, not start on, I started on it a few years back. It was going to be a follow-up to the Rockin' On CD, Keep On Rockin On CD, I should say. And it was going to be called Red Sky because it was going to be a collection of songs that I wrote for and performed with Red Sky. I did some basic work on it not long after I did the Keep On Rockin On CD then, but for whatever reason, various reasons, I kind of didn't pursue it. Now that I've got Eric's Journey done, I want to record as much of my music, both instrumental and rock stuff, all sorts of stuff, that I've written over the years, that most of which nobody's heard except me. I've probably written about 300 songs over the years and lots of instrumental music. Mike Oldfield is a massive hero of mine in terms of music. Eric's Journey was inspired originally by him. Not only his music, Tubular Bells, obviously, and later albums such as On the Dawn is probably my favourite album of his. It was the fact that he recorded the whole thing himself when he was 19. That's what captivated me. And years back, probably talking 77, 78, I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to record an album of instrumental music, and I want to do it all myself. It was just like, I want to copy Mike Oldfield. I want to be like him. But at the same time, I was also wanting to be a rock star. I wanted to copy Quo. I wanted to copy Motorhead. So I've always been quite diverse in musical tastes and stuff that I've written. I've written lots of instrumental stuff that would probably surprise people because they expect it to go dun 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 dun. So yeah, my next project is to go back to the ideas that I started working on, the Red Sky songs. I want to record them, and I've got an idea for another project, which is an earlier band that, again, Dave Owen was drummer in. We had a band, ironically, called Rhino, nothing to do with John Edwards. It's just a name that we came up with at the time, no connection with Quo whatsoever. It was the early 80s. And it was heavier stuff. We were a 3-piece band. And at the time, I was a massive Motorhead fan of the classic lineup of Lemmy and Phil Taylor and Fast Eddie Clarke. Fast Eddie Clarke was a massive hero to me at the time. Not the greatest guitarist in the world in terms of technical stuff, but I just loved what he did. And I related to it more than I could relate to, say, I don't know, Van Halen. You know, Eddie Van Halen was a phenomenal musician, phenomenal guitar player. Not my kind of thing, though, basically because I couldn't do it. You know, Fast Eddie's stuff I could do. Francis Rossi's stuff I could do. That's probably why I've always been more drawn to rawer bands, you know, heads down, no nonsense stuff than the technical stuff of the likes of Van Halen and Steve Vai, Joe Satriani. Amazing, absolutely stunning. You know, I open mouthed when I see what those guys can do on a guitar. It's just unbelievable. How they do it is just beyond me. I don't know how anybody can make the fingers move that fast. It's crazy, but it's just not my. It's not for me. One of my all-time favorite guitar players is the late Paul Kossoff of Free. And I once read a quote in a music magazine that summed it up for me. And I can't remember who said it, but he said he would rather listen to Paul Kossoff play one note than than Joe Satriani play 1,000. And that's me. You know, I like emotion and soul in the playing. If I can't hum or whistle the solo, it's not for me. And I don't know how I got onto that diatribe, but what did you ask me in the first place?
No, it was good. It was good. It was about whether you were going to write another album like Keep On Rockin On. But no, thank you for answering the question. And believe it or not, the podcasting is one of the very few things where you can go off on tangents like that, and the audience love it.
I've just remembered what the point I was trying to make was our earlier band. Which was called, as I say, was called Rhino. The songs I was writing were very much Ace of Spades era Motorhead influenced. And when I've done the Red Sky songs, what I want to do is go back even further and re-record my old songs that were written for the band Rhino. And one idea I have had is, in the same way that I did the songs for Keep On Rockin On in a style that was recognizable as being like Quo, I'd like to record the Rhino songs in a style that would be recognised as Motorhead. So it would have the overdriven Rickenbacker bass. You know, I don't quite know how I'd get around the vocal bit, but I've not worked that out yet. But they would be instantly recognisable as, you know, this is something Motorhead could have recorded in the late 80s, early 80s, I should say.
Well, your attention to detail is astounding, and I've known you on and off for 12 years, and you never cease to amaze me. And if anybody wants to hear Keep On Rockin On, the album he recorded 10 years ago, they can go to ianhill.bigcartel.com. They can also order merchandise for State of Quo on there, and that's available on CD via that, or they can listen and download on ianhill.bandcamp.com. I'll leave all the links in the description of this podcast. Well, Ian, it's been great talking to you, and I realize we could talk about this for hours, I'm sure, but I am going to let you go now so you can think about your next recording project that you say you're going to start the day after this recording. But Ian Hill, thank you very much for being on the Quo-Cast today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been fun. And can I just say, with you mentioning the Big Cartel and Bandcamp links, what I've now done and what I intend to do, I've set up a new website, and I'm going to, because there's the instrumental album that's now on a different Bandcamp account to the Keep On Rockin On one, and the Big Cartel. There's so many different sites that you can go to where these things are. I'm working on bringing it all together onto the one website, which is musicianhill.com or musicianhill.com. Clever
Awesome.
stuff. I don't know how you read it. So if there's any confusion, if anybody wants to check out the Keep On Rockin On project or even the Arix Journey instrumental thing, and when I've finished it, the Red Sky thing will be on there, plus any subsequent stuff that I do. It'll all be on www.musicianhill.com. All one word, Music Ian Hill.